We're live.
And we're live.
Like, we're actually live, though, too.
We are live. We're in person and live. We're live,
true.
alive.
We're not across town from one another.
We are also not alone.
Never. We're never alone.
I don't mean symbolically. I mean, we're actually not alone. There are people in the room who are attempting not to engage.
They find it awkward to look at us while we're looking at the screen.
That is actually probably part of it. But we're actually at Connect Labs by Wexford today. I'm drinking out of one of their fancy mugs at the moment. Love it. It's a really solid mug. I like the much better like latte shape that they put in this.
I feel like you might spill and it get on you. You know, like just the way it funnels out. You know?
It's been fine so far, but now I've drinked myself, and at some point during this live. So hopefully that won't happen, but we'll see. But this would be like if you were doing wine, it'd be an aroma collector, right? So because it has the funnel shape, so it traps the aromas in the glass. So you do that for like a lot of red wines where you want to be able to capture.
You're much more bougie than me. Well, shall we get into it?
Speaking of bougie. So we're at Connect Labs today because we are right in the middle, like literally halfway through a session with one of our Traction Lab forums, our fourth fora, which is stocked with a bunch of interesting companies, really diverse ones, actually. Pretty broad spectrum one, working on some cool stuff. We're talking experiments today and
traction science, baby.
Traction science, baby. Actually getting into the weeds of designing experiments that are precise, that are specific, that are falsifiable, that can be hopefully validated in the course of a few days. Obviously, depending on the nature of the experiment, that can change. But so we're in like full experiment mindset. So my assumption is that we're going to spend some time talking about experiments today because they're on our minds. Although that doesn't really separate us from our normal office hours, where it seems like we spend all of our time talking about experiments. Weird. But we are, of course, in an Ask Us Anything format. So as you guys online have questions, throw them down into the LinkedIn comments, and we will answer them live here. If you're watching this on a replay, throw them down in the comments anyway. We collect them, as you know. If you've been with us any time at all, we have a queue of questions from the past all ready to go. So we have those, and then also any of our founders that are in the room, you'll just have to trust us that they're here. But any of our founders in the room who have questions on anything startup related, from fundraising, product market fit, traction science, traction thinking, team, we address all the things, and if we don't know the answers, we make up ones that sound convincible in the moment. So hit us up if you got anything. Otherwise, you want to get to it?
Let's do it. Let's hop on in. Let's go into the actual real grab bag. We actually have
a grab bag of questions. We should put them in one of those drums.
Yeah, there you go.
So we can pull it out like bingo.
There you go.
Okay. All right. I can't help but address the one who's trying to build an AI meeting notes system for remote teams. Because we could use that. Because we could use them, and we do use some of them. So maybe we'll use theirs. Here we go. So their question is, we've had a few people use it, but no one is sharing it with their team. Should we build the team features next? Okay. So what I'm hearing here is a couple things. So you're wanting to build an AI meeting note system for remote teams. So like you've identified that is our like big, hairy, audacious goal. But it sounds like you haven't built the team features yet. And so like maybe you just had this wedge to market. We did like a B2C strategy. I'm going to get in front of like individual people and then use that as a wedge, like product-led growth, like referral strategy into the broader business, which is a perfectly fair strategy. And so now you're like, okay, we have some, individualized features. They're being used by the businesses, but they're not sharing it with their teams. So, are the team features what's logically next? I think is kind of what I'm picking up here. So yeah,
one of the things that comes to mind, like it'd be interesting to like unpack through some conversations with your existing customers. Like, are they getting asked by other people on the team of like, hey, how are you using this note taker? Or are they already the beneficiaries of those notes being taken? And so therefore, like, there's no reason to have additional people in the team. So for example, Josh and I use a similar AI note-taking thing, and I'm the beneficiary of him using it to start, right? And then sometimes, I might need it when we have separate meetings. And so that was the reason we've taken on 2 of these, I guess, Tanas that are out there. But, part of it is if uncovering are people actually like asking for that same solution, and that they could get their own particular value from it.
Right. And so I'm curious what your hypothesis is, at least, of the value proposition for the team at large, right? So for example, I take notes, or my AI assistant takes notes, right? But when Cameron and I are both in the meeting, sometimes we'll have both of our note takers there because we'll both click the button without coordinating in advance. But otherwise, like
just burning credits,
burning AI credits, contributing to the problem of AI power consumption. But when my system takes the notes, like whatever our system is, I will have put them somewhere, right? And so like he gets the benefit of that. So if we were all in the same meetings, it doesn't do us both any good to have a quote unquote a license for that. And so what is it that we're doing that connects us together? Like what is the team feature? Like what's the hypothesis there? Because the small amount of data that you have, so a few people using it, I don't know what that means, but like a few people using it, no one sharing it with their team, like that is speaking much more in my mind to like the referral side, the product-led growth side, than it is speaking to like the team feature side. So those are still two different questions for me. And so I might share it with Cameron, as I did, because I showed him Tana because I was using it in meetings. He's like, hey, what's this? And now he's using it too. And so like that led to growth, but we're not actually in the same Tana team because we just haven't had that need yet. Because we have everything Google Drive, we store everything in Google Drive, so everything's in there.
Well, I think because like part of it, right, is like what is the walking through the life cycle of how they're using this tool. So what is like the end deliverable that they're creating out of it, and understanding that space. And so maybe that's something that's actually where the team might interact versus it being like, oh, they're always going to be going like, we probably would never have our end result actually live in Tana because that's just not the need that it helps us serve. And so understanding that particular space would be key.
We got a question in the chat from somebody in the room, which is very confusing.
Yeah. And this probably was sent, at least 5 minutes ago with the delay here on LinkedIn Live. So it's probably wondering why we haven't gotten to the question yet.
So to round out this one question before we move on to Yanni's question, is that I worry about signal dilution here. Right. So I don't actually think that if you're seeing a few people using it and you're not seeing those referrals, I actually don't think this says anything about the team aspect at all, because I don't know, I'm not convinced, at least based on what you've written, whether or not those team features are even tied to whether or not they refer inside a company. Yeah. Because I don't know what they are. You didn't tell me. It's I don't know. So I would say don't go down that path of trying to overinterpret these types of signals. I would say that should we build the team features next? No, unless you have data that you haven't given us that there is demand for those features. But the signals that you have here aren't telling you either way. So I don't. I think it's the wrong question to ask, actually. So okay. Should we do Yanni's question?
Yeah, since he's here.
Since he's here. All right, Yanni, dude. All right, you can say your question out loud.
Yeah, so I'm having a lot of difficulty with what I'm being told should be in a pitch deck and what some investors are wanting. I feel like there is. Sorry, should I repeat it?
No.
So I feel like I'm starting to trust a source as they've either written a check or have received a check in this regard, and I don't know if I'm on the right track there, but I'm starting to redo my entire pitch deck, and I was wondering if you could give me some insight into what I should do. Textbook versus reality, who should I trust? This and
that. So I'll start with a controversial opinion. I don't know if it's controversial.
No, I think not in the traction lab.
Maybe not. But what is probably at large a controversial opinion, which I'd say most of the time the deck doesn't matter at all. It's usually the deck is a distraction. Unless you're actively fundraising, it's usually a distraction. That's not to say that you shouldn't have one, because like that would be taking it too far, because it is like a pitch deck is the agreed upon communications tool of our industry. And so you have to have one, because somebody, like even the potential advisor will say, hey, throw me your deck, because we all just assume everybody has one. So you do need one. But what they are is a communications tool at that point. And so what you want them to do is tell the story as best they can of the current state of Auth Hero. And so you have to have one, but it's not going to matter nearly as much as you do, which is my way of also saying that like when you look at improving the deck, quote unquote, if we're just talking about the deck and not the business, right? So like we could say like, oh, hey, your business model sucks, while talking about the slide, and then the next time I see the slide is better, but that's because you fixed the business model, right? That was not something with the deck. That was something in the business. But assuming we're talking about making like, oh, sorry, that business model was confusing the way I wrote it. Let me clarify that and simplify that. Those changes are all great, and you're going to get a lot of different opinions upon them over time. But two things. One is the only way to actually get, I think, real data, actionable insight from that is to actually just get the reps in, and you'll see what works as you pitch to 50 different people. So that's number one. Like because you're going to get a bunch of different opinions. You're going to see what lands. Sometimes different people who have different preferences and different theses that they focus on, different industries. Some people like more technical decks, some less. So there's a lot of that stuff that's going to go in there. So just get the reps in through actual pitching in front of people that matters, and ignore everybody who it doesn't. And then the second thing that I'll say is none of those are going to be distinctions that get you funded or not. They're all going to be like, yes, your pitch is better, but if your pitch deck is a little bit confusing, it's something that will be cleaned up in Q&A and you'll fix it for next time. It's not something that's going to get you rejected, almost always. So I would say don't focus too much on the pitch, because it probably doesn't matter anyway. And then second, like the improvements that you make to the actual deck itself are going to be marginal as opposed to primary.
Yeah, and I would try to unearth if those questions or feedback are actually truly related to the deck itself, or if it's really a business model question, and that will give you the insight of, this is just something that they didn't like the way the story flowed, or is it that they didn't like the story of us actually having limited evidence or not enough evidence at certain components of it. And so we often talk about that feedback can be couched as a communication or a performance aspect, and that's also the aesthetic of the pitch when there's actually questions and there are sensors going off related to foundational elements of your business model. And so you want to unearth if that's actually the case and say, oh, could you share more about like what didn't land on the go-to-market strategy? And if they're like, oh, like the slide looks weird this way, then you actually know it's about the slide versus actually, I just don't understand what your go-to-market strategy is. So you could tie more to that.
We actually have a tool that we use a lot, and I don't think we've actually digitized it yet, so it's I was hoping I could find it, but this is a whiteboard tool that we use that we've been meaning to digitize for a while. It's a triangle, and it's I forget what we call it.
We have so many triangles. That's why I think it's a good thing our logos are.
It's triangles because it's triangles all the way down too, because you got triangles inside triangles inside triangles. But it's a pitch feedback triangle. We need a better name for it. But like the basic idea is that there's 4 layers to the types of feedback that you get from investors during a pitch. And so but the problem is that on the surface, those are really hard to tell the difference between them, because the way that the feedback is given is always in, hey, your business model slide didn't make sense. And that doesn't mean that the slide itself didn't make sense, right? It's because we've agreed on the communications tool, so the commentary becomes all about the communications tool. But that's the top of the pyramid, is that presentation stuff, that performative aspects of it. The next layer of the pyramid is like the actual storytelling aspect of this. So it's like, okay, yeah, we could improve the way the business model is in there, but actually what this is we're telling the wrong story about how this thing can even scale, right? So and that doesn't change the data that we have, but the way that we're talking about that data is like leading somebody down a path that's maybe not super helpful. Then beneath that communications, you created a little one there. Okay,
it's pretty ugly, but we'll share it anyways.
Well, you can throw it on the TV behind us.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. That way that people can sort of see it.
So yeah, keep talking.
because I'll just lean to the side. Okay, beneath the communication, so we have like performance and we have the communication aspect of it. Beneath the communications aspect, we have what we call the business model side. And this, it's more than the business model, but this is like it's actual communication on, is it on the other side?
No, you got it, just keep it.
Oh, well, so this is actual feedback on the business itself, right? So this is like, they're not saying, I don't like the business model slide is confusing. They're saying your business model sucks. Right. And so that's where a lot of feedback will come from. And it won't necessarily be obvious that what they're trying to do is give you feedback on the business model. It's going to sound like they're giving you feedback way up here on like the way that the slide looks or your performance, or it was confusing the way you talked about. What they actually mean is your business model sucks. And that's like the bulk of the questions that you get are going to be in that space oftentimes, but there's actually a level beneath that too, which is the thesis one, which is, are investors even interested in what you're after? So like and there's a couple different ways that looks. So if you're pitching, like in your case, Yanni, where you're doing a health tech thing, some investors don't invest in health tech. And so if you're trying to pitch to a health tech investor, like you just have that fundamental thesis mismatch, right? And so a lot of the questions that they ask, like hopefully an investor who has that strong aversion, or if they're a fund and it's outside their thesis, they will just be like, hey, we actually don't invest in health tech. We focus mostly on B2B productivity tools. And so like, it's not a good fit for us, man. Right. And like, that's fine. That's great. Move on. Right. But there's another form of thesis that doesn't get called out quite as clearly. And that's when their thesis is in stage, which is every fund has stage as part of their thesis. And every investor has stage as part of their own thesis, whether they call it that or not, which is like, do we invest in friends, family, and fools, angel, pre-seed, seed, series A, et cetera. And so if they're a predominantly like seed series A fund, and you're pitching to them at the like pre-seed angel round level, like they don't write checks to your company. And so like you're trying to raise a $500,000 round or $750,000 round, and they write checks that are $250,000, $500,000. And so now we already have a mismatch there, right? And so they're not leading around so much as they would be the round. And so like there's a mismatch there, and which also means that the level of evidence that they're expecting from you is so much more. They're looking for a lot more traction. And so then what the feedback will be is they'll say, we want to see more traction. But they don't mean we want to see more traction. They mean come back when you're ready for us. What they mean is like, we don't invest in your stage of company. But they don't usually say that because they don't want to close the door on deal flow. They want you, like they didn't hate you. You weren't outside all the other aspects of the thesis. They want you to put them on their investor updates. So 6 months from now, maybe you'll pound out because 1 in 20 that they talk to will, and then you'll be ready for them, right? They want to come back when they're ready. Or they want you to come back when they're ready. And so you have to like pay, when you're getting feedback on your pitch, you have to come back to this pyramid and say like, the feedback that I'm getting, at what level of this pyramid am I getting that feedback? Are they truly giving me feedback on my deck? Or are they saying my traction story doesn't make sense? Or are they saying you don't have traction? Yanni has given you the universal symbol for I did an amazing job. Thank you for that. That was obviously what that hand gesture meant. I won't show it on screen, but that was clearly what that hand gesture meant. Okay, cool. No other questions in the chat?
No, let's go to we got one here.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about an ideal customer today. What exactly is an ideal customer?
Well, it's a customer who's ideal. It's really not a complicated thing. So it basically is it's two things. So your ideal customer is, I would say, the customer that you most want to serve and who most wants you to serve them. Right, so it's the intersection of those two things. And so we usually think about it from only the one side, which is the customers who want you the most side, because that's the foundation, right? And so it's those are your early adopters, the niche that you're going after. We really want to serve companies that are at between this size and that size, because if they're any bigger than that, the sales cycles get way too long. That's our factor, right? But their factor might be, as they get bigger, they have an employee who does that already. So they're not the ideal customer for us. We're going to close so much fewer of those deals because most of them have a guy who does that. And so they don't need our B2B tool to do that. So in your case, like for boxing headgear, like then it might be like, well, there's a big difference between a professional boxer, an amateur boxer, a collegiate boxer, somebody who's part of a league, somebody who's not. Like those are all very different. So who is the one who most wants the analytics and the hit detection and all that stuff? Like who is the person who's going to benefit most from that? Like that guy at the start is the start of the ideal customer persona, or your ICP. The other side of that is which one is best for you. And so that's like those factors, like which ones are easy to close, which ones are actually wedges into the market. So like it may be really easy to close these guys, but it's a dead end. So we'll like close a really small segment of the market. The traction that we get doesn't help us. Like we see this a lot with people who try to make a B2C play before making a B2B play. And the B2C play validates that the consumers like it, but it's never enough to make money. But it's not validating that the businesses ever want it. Right? Now, in the case of like that remote AI tool that we had earlier, that's a common exception to that, where if you can get individual people within the context of the business to use it, then that can be a wedge into the businesses because you're validating the business need in the context of an individual, right? But so like, how do they fit into your overall product roadmap? That is like, are they ideal from your side? Do they help you get into the market? Are they cheap and efficient to get in front of? Because if they're not, it doesn't matter how willing and eager they are, you'll never find them, or it's too expensive to find them.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Next question.
We'll go to the grab bag here if there's not any other.
Reaching on in to the grab bag to pull one out.
Number 4.
Number 4. Oh, okay. We're getting a number calling again. All right, number 4. Number 4 on the list. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mental wellness app for college students.
I've never heard of that.
Never heard of those. Never heard of those. This has never existed before. I've only heard of 7 or 8 of them
in the last
3
year.
months.
We got our heads
Not that
straight.
we're not knocking you. We're not knocking you. We're not.
Well, that means there's some sort of problem out there, and there's
Correct.
no one solving.
Right, and no one's cracked it yet, is what it means. There's a problem out there that people obviously see, and no one's cracked it yet.
Or figure out how to monetize it. I think that's actually usually
in this case. Yeah, it's not. Okay, so the question is, we're thinking of making it free until we hit 10,000 users. Is that a good growth strategy?
Growth to inevitable like costs and non-paying customers. But no, I think in terms of read it one more time.
We're thinking of making it free until we hit 10,000 users. Is that a good growth strategy?
I mean, I think it's a good growth strategy just to get a lot of users. If your like path is to monetize having users on the platform, you're creating a lot of data and things that then you can ultimately create real estate, or what we call a derivative asset that you're ultimately selling going forward. So if that's part of your path to monetization, then that could be a feasible thing to do. But I imagine selling data on a mental wellness platform for college students doesn't land well. And so I think that there's a fundamental challenge there. I think a lot of it's going to be challenged when you say, okay, you've had all this free access, particularly when you go from 0 to 10,000 users. That might take some time. And so people have got a lot of free value out of it. And so when you turn on the paid featured element, I think that could be a challenge unless there's like some freemium model that you've really set at the front end of ultimately positioning this app to the market.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, right? So you can't let free become a crutch. And so like if your plan is I'm going to get 10,000 users and then charge those users, it is a terrible growth strategy because all you're doing is punting the really important piece of information, which is, will anybody pay for this? Right. And so you're punting on that being a thing. And that's a really dangerous game to play unless you want to burn cash like the Joker. But outside of that, like if you're trying to monetize in another way, like through ads or data or something like that, or if you're you might be actually needing some market density before it's valuable enough, in which case like that might be another strategy. It's much harder to get funding for those though, because you have to burn cash for so long before it becomes profitable. And you're really, again, punting on a really important decision, which is like, we have this cockamamie scheme about how we'll monetize it, but really have no data behind that monetization now. And so you're going to need like multiple potential approaches. The camera's got a mind of its own again. We're going to need multiple paths of potential monetization in order for that to be something that's even worth like investing in, because we can't like bet the house on one path of monetization working with no evidence on it. So
yeah, so we we had talked at the front end of, we've seen this multiple times. And so the model we've often seen is where they, try to get a number of college, students. It could be, hey, let's get, I think they would get up to like, say, 5,000 students on the platforms. And then they're like, oh, well, we're going to position this to the universities to pay for. And you haven't necessarily even validated that that's actually a particular problem that they're interested in solving. We would hope that they would, but like, what's the model and pain point that you're ultimately solving for them going forward? So we got there we go. I'm not sure what happened there, but nonetheless.
It activated again. Now I'm.
There you go. It should be fine now.
All right. Well, it's an
Cool.
instruction manual somewhere, I'm sure. All right, cool. Any
trash
do we get
Yeah.
I had a follow-up question on that. So the other day when we were doing our
Yanni.
meeting, and
Thank you.
I said we would like to, run a survey and then say, oh, if you participate, you can get a chance to like do this giveaway or enter a giveaway. Well, why would you like say absolutely not, or like just like
Say it one more time.
So we were planning on doing like a giveaway. They do the email, right, and then we give away like a headgear for free, like a giveaway thing.
Because it didn't like what we're trying to prove is that they're willing to pay for it, and so we haven't really demonstrated that that's the behavior yet, and so they're already interested on your list, right? And so it's like they've signed up to be waiting for this thing. We might as well test that first, than like trying to create some scheme to get just another like level of data that's maybe not as strong if they're actually like waiting for the headgear. And so I think it was like, for me, it was like pushing the can down the road to like ask the hard question that like actually will give us insight into like what a key next step would be. So that was kind of where I pushed on that. So
Okay, that makes a lot.
Yeah.
There are places where those schemes make sense, but what you want to make sure is that the scheme is it is to in and of itself work on the most important thing, right? So if you were to, for example, like let's say you had an email growth strategy, and like, 'cause we have this really small wait list right now, and we can't like sell right now. We don't like have enough people to even do this to. You might do some giveaway in an attempt to grow the email list, because what you're trying to do right now is prove demand for like the problem and solution, as opposed to willingness to pay, right? And then you just know that that's the thing that you're validating. You're doing that by way of getting people to sign up for the mailing list, which hopefully you can then use to prove willingness to pay later. But you just have to make sure you're focusing on the most important question. Otherwise, you're just kicking the can out. Yeah. Cool. All right, we got a question from the peanut gallery. I mean, from the Greek chorus.
you taught me about what the peanut gallery was.
Did I?
I think it was like where they used to throw peanuts at people, right?
It's when they used to throw the peanuts, I think, actually.
Into the audience?
No, I think the audience was throwing the peanuts, man. It's where they used to serve peanuts because it doesn't matter.
We have fun in the traction.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. The question: if you're a B2G startup, how to create a distribution flywheel to reach out to government agencies without having sales cycle be 1 year and close on pilots sooner?
There's like 4 questions.
Yeah. So I think like one of the first things that comes to mind is I'm going to make an assumption here, but as you're selling into government agencies, they usually have some threshold of what they can spend without an RFP process. And so when I think of a long sales cycle, it often takes a big element of having to maybe potentially go through an RFP. And so understanding what that price threshold is. And I don't want you to say like artificially sell your product or service below that just because of that reason. Like if it costs what it costs, then you obviously have to position it that way. But that can also be a barrier if it's like, I think at Sac State, if it's over $50,000 or more, it has to go through an RFP process. And so you'd be required to have that then be opened up to other people to bid on. The other, in terms of, as you think of like the sales cycle, I think in that discovery process, one of the key things is understanding, yes, who the economic buyer is, but what like work do they have to do to steward that through the process, and setting up front how you can start to remove some of that inertia or barriers in getting started. So for example, if I was to procure technology on campus, one, yes, I can choose with our budget, but I do have to then go to IRT to have them check all of these different boxes that it, is good with student data, it's good with all of these other things, it's compliant. And so understanding that landscape of what someone has to push through might help you in setting up the documentation to close those sales cycle more quickly. I think part of it is empowering the person who's going to have to champion it through the process to ultimately give them the documentation and resources they might need. So that's what comes to mind for me. But
yeah, I agree with all that. I don't think I have too much to add on that. So maybe just I'll come at the question super briefly from another perspective. So I think that while all the stuff in this question is related together, it's still several different questions. So the distribution flywheel is about getting in front of people cheaply and efficiently.
Right.
But that's sort of secondary. Is you have to know first who you're trying to get in front of. And I think that's where the second part comes in is as we're looking at these long sales cycles and you want to close on pilots sooner, which I'll note the distinction between sales cycle and the pilot cycle. But if you want to close on those sooner, that might actually speak to who. And it might not just be who within that particular agency. It might be what agencies we're even talking to. And so those two questions are going to tell you who those people are. And then that will speak back to what is the distribution flywheel we can use to get in front of those people. And so if you depends on what you're optimizing for. So if you have we have these long sales cycles, but evidence that they're working and the pilot's close sooner, that's all, well and good, then you can focus on well, it sucks, but we can maybe get a better distribution flywheel for these people. But if the problem that we're trying to solve is actually these long sales cycles or even getting to pilots, I would say the distribution flywheel doesn't matter yet because we haven't validated the people that we want to distribute to. So that would be sort of how I'd answer that. Is I think there's a sequence of events there.
Nice.
We have one more question.
Yep.
Which we'll answer quickly because then we gotta run and keep our forum going here. But
so I'll read it, and then if you want to take a step. So this is from Jeremy here. So when developing an automated solution that touches customer interaction, how did you balance the efficiency of automation with the need for personalization and maintaining a human touch, particularly in sensitive areas like customer feedback?
Yeah, this is a great question. And there's a couple different ways to answer this. There's a UX way to answer this, and there's the business way to answer this. I could answer it both ways for the sake of time. I think I'm going to leave the UX one sort of aside for the moment and answer it really from the business model side. And so the question is really going to come back to what the value proposition is that you're offering to the businesses who are going to be adopting the automation technology. So if you're promising them we're going to save you resources on the accounts side, on the account management side, then what you really the customer satisfaction side, the customer feedback side, or whatever that need there is really going to be how do we prevent a drop off, right? How do we prevent the business from suffering on that side, right? Because they're really after the cost savings, and so it's not about something on side. If you're selling them a better means of customer interaction or personalizing something on the customer side, or if you're trying to sell a business on getting a more personal touch, through automation, then that becomes a more central part of the value proposition. And now you have two different sides of a market almost that you have to validate, at least from a UX perspective. And then the way to do that, I think, would be rapid prototyping with the end, the avatar of the end user, and trying to figure out if this is the kind of thing that does create the experience that we're claiming it makes to the business.
Boom.
Feel free to throw some more detail in the chat. We'll tackle it next week. But
bring it in. We'll add it to the grab bag for our next go. But appreciate you all hopping on our Traction Lab office hours live here, and for those here in person with questions. So we will see you next week. And we'll be hopefully on the.
There's applause from the
There
room.
we go.
That's the first time we've ever
So
had.
we got to do this again.